Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number
5
of the OMNIA Performance Podcast. I'm Fergus Crawley.
I'm Jonny Payne.
And we are OMNIA Performance. Today...
We did promise last time we'd say that at the same time.
Oh, we did.
We'll get it.
We'll try it again. We'll do it. We are OMNIA Performance. Inflection. We'll work on that. We will do better, everyone. We will do better. Today, we are going to talk about the lessons learned from last year's CELTMAN and how we are approaching things differently with the event looming. So today is the 27th of April that we are recording this. That means there are 7 weeks and several days, 7 weeks and some change before round 2, which is a bit of a redemptive experience for myself. Jonny has his own take on the CELTMAN, which I don't know if he has shared publicly before. I don't think you have you really?
Vaguely. Maybe 2016 I attempted the CELTMAN. We'll come back to that if you want, but I did write a blog post about it back then, but it'll be buried under the others I wrote.
A lot of blog posts, apparently. But we're just gonna basically talk about the considerations that we as a athlete/coaching team, because Jonny is still my coach. Whilst we do coach others in the same things, I would not be foolish enough to coach myself, as I am a bloke with ambitions, which means that I would second guess everything I do and ruin everything for myself. And that is the same reason I assist Jonny with his programming, as he falls into the same category of self-destructive masculine tendencies coming from a place of ambition and goal setting, I think is fair to say.
I think that was a very nice way to say.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
that we just stop each other being idiots.
But no, all jokes aside, on that point, the reason we do that is because when you're doing your own program, it's easy to get overly analytical, change things where you're feeling good, adjust things where you're feeling bad. Having that second set of eyes, having that person to be a soundboard is very, very useful. But we're not going to make this a sales pitch. This is going to be more of a conversation about the CELTMAN in general terms. For those who don't know, the CELTMAN is one of the extreme triathlon world tour races based up in Torridon in the northwest of Scotland, and it is a brute of a race, let me tell you. So, the extreme triathlon world tour races are generally Ironman distance and beyond, but in harsher, windier, hillier, colder conditions, and they are in some incredible, incredible places around the world. One of those places is Torridon, which is magnificent. For those that don't know, anything north of Inverness is unlike anywhere else in the UK. There is very little infrastructure. There is very little motorways, supermarket. There isn't a supermarket north of Inverness, put it that way. And there are 3 hours more of Scotland north, 3 hours west, a whole load of stuff going on.
For all the people up my way, say there is, but not where you're going.
Is there a supermarket in Thursday?
Yeah. No. Yeah, there's a few supermarkets north of Inverness. But if you're going up your way, if we go up to Torridon, let's take the map up that way.
Did I say Scotland? I meant out west towards Torridon.
You go northwest out towards that neck of the woods. And certainly as you go into Shieldag and Torridon itself, the area that races raced around, it would be wrong and disrespectful to say barren, but it's isolated.
It's isolated, but it's a different kind of isolated, because you think of the Lake District and Snowdon as a bit isolated off the beaten track in terms of English infrastructure, but there really is very, very little up this way, which makes for, one, a beautiful setting, but two, a demanding race. So 3.4 kilometre swim starting in Loch Shieldag, which is a sea loch coming off the Atlantic. 3.4 kilometres, it was shortened from 3.8 because the water was too cold. It generally sits at about 10 or 11 degrees, and there are ample jellyfish to throw a spanner in the works, or a jellyfish in the water in this case, which could be equally useful, a phrase or cliche. So you are out of the water into some bagpipey, flamey steps. Flamey sounds intense. There are flame machines making it all cool and
There is fire.
There is fire. Fire is the word I was looking for. And then you are into transition 1 before a 202-kilometre bike ride around some of the roads of the North Coast 500, basically down into Kinlochhew, and then you're doing a loop up around, turning right on the main road where you could turn left towards Ullapool, and then you're back in through, so you go through lots of places I can name, but basically you do a loop around the Northwest Highlands back into Kinlochhew, where there is transition 2. Then there is transition 2 to 2A, which is 19 kilometres, not 17 kilometres, as I was told by several marshals last year. We'll get onto that.
With let that go,
860 metres. No, I'm never going to let that go. 860 metres of elevation. Yeah. So it's basically a half marathon with a whole load of gain to kick things off. And then at T2A, if you get there in 11 hours, you go up onto the high course, which then takes you over 2 Monroes on Ben Aig.
Ben Aig.
Somebody's been on walkhighlands.com. I'm not going to try and pronounce it again because it was probably wrong. Callum McLean, if you're listening, please do tell. Beyond that, there is the option of the low course, which is what I ended up doing last year, and we'll touch upon that a little bit more. It still has considerable elevation gain, but it doesn't take you up to the height of the Two Munros that you go up onto. The high course both equal a marathon, both have over 1,000 meters of elevation as part of a said marathon, and that culminates in the finish line in Torridon by the youth centre, the youth hostel, where you finish a magnificent journey of a day. I don't view it as a race, mainly because I'll never win, but also because for me it doesn't feel like a race. It feels like a journey. It feels like an experience. It doesn't feel competitive. There's so much more going on. You don't have aid stations. You instead have a support car. You require a support runner for safety. Mountain rescuer on hand because of the danger of the mountain. There's a huge kit list that you need to have with you for safety's sake as well. And there are a lot of considerations that go out with regular Ironman training. So you've got to wear booties and gloves in the water. Otherwise, you don't have to, but there is the option to.
You can. Yeah.
Otherwise, things will get too cold. The bike, you need layers galore. You've got obviously a support car with all the food in there. So the strategy is a little bit different. It's 22 kilometers longer than an average Ironman distance bike ride, and it's got 2,400 meters of gain, as well as the lack of infrastructure road surface that is often a bit of a pain in the arse. Quite literally, when it is peppering your... What is perineum? Yes. Several things came to my head that were not the correct term, but that is the polite way to put this. So chamois cream is essential, but...
Gooch, I think you'll find, is the...
That's what I was trying not to say, Johnny. Medical term, yes. I heard it on Grey's Anatomy, so therefore we are in the clear. No, I don't think they've ever said gooch on Grey's Anatomy for anyone thinking, I've not heard that before. So that is an overview of the CELTMAN. I will run through my experience last year in a bit more detail in a second, but before we do, Johnny is going to run through his experience from 2016.
Yeah. A lot of it I can't remember. And not because I was drunk.
For a change,
yeah. So I signed up for, trained for, and took part in the CELTMAN in 2016. Exact same conditions, exact same race. It's been, I think that was the third or fourth iteration. It was early in its. I
think this is year
lineage.
10.
Yeah, so there you go. So 2016 must have been
fourth. Yeah,
fourth. Yeah, and so, but still the same race. And it became a sort of disaster, really, at a very early stage. Got in the water, I think 10, 15 minutes in, maybe 15, 20 minutes in, I took a hit. Never been knocked out in any circumstance before, and that's including any kind of combat sports, but I got knocked out in the water. So my assumption is either a heel or an elbow or something's caught me in the back of behind the ear or something like that and just knocked me spark out. So I was fished out of the water. I came to, my only understanding of that was I came to draped over a kayak, and I thought I was in the grappling competition, so I was fighting that kayak and trying to strangle it, and not being successful.
I believe that's what we called post-concussion syndrome.
Well, yeah. The chap said to me, right, you've got 30 seconds, you can swim away from this kayak. Once I started to make sense, if you can swim away from this kayak, you've got 30 seconds for me to decide whether or not you're safe enough to continue this swim. So of course I'll be fine. Swam away in such a tight circle, I'm not sure I could ever recreate it. I swam right back around and bumped my head off that very same kayak. And he said, right, out. And then there was a boat came, and I got whisked out of the water pretty sharp. I think everybody's still quite baffled at how this happened, but I managed to talk to the marshals and the organisers via walkie-talkie, whatever comms it was, maybe the boat, whatever, and have them agree that I was at that point a DNF, but I would get taken to T1, and then I could get on the bike and go. And
sign a waiver to say you were no.
I had to sign a waiver to say
no longer part of the race.
No longer part of the race, and that I had sort of agreed to do or decided to do this against kind of any kind of medical sense. And
just to make clear that
I should say, yeah,
they are a legitimate organisation, and that Johnny wasn't just there.
So, well, we don't think you should, but if you do, nobody's going to beat you up about it. So anyway, I cracked on. My wife will tell you that I spent the first 5 minutes in T1 trying to put my socks on my head, so that might tell you something about where my mind was. And then carried on. I did complete it, barring not having completed the swim, and it was a challenge. It was a challenge for obvious reasons, having given you that kind of introduction. But it was a challenge because it was a brutal race. It was really very, very tough. another ridiculous part of that story is that the bike I was on was a jalopy bike that my brother had bought from me from a chap in the pub. I was doing it in my trainers, didn't have any cleats or anything. Really had no real right to be there at all, I don't think. So I had to do that with no cleats and all the rest of it, but got through, missed the cut-off for the, and we'll come to your own experience of that, missed the cut-off after all that for the high course by 15 minutes. That was very upsetting. I figured that some crazy redemption would be to be going fast enough to get up on that high course, but didn't manage. But did the low course, and again, as you know, the high course, low course decision making from and cut off isn't about capability or ability on the mountains. It's simply about light and time. If you get there after a certain point, it's probably a bad idea for mountain rescue to be then looking after people who've been out there for a long time on the
fatigue
feet.
sets in, depletion sets in, doesn't it?
So the likelihood of you being in a little bit more or more dangerous scenarios increases after a certain amount of time out there. And so, again, for me, I'd been 15 minutes after that cut off, did the low course and finished it in actually what would have been a reasonable time. I could be proud of everything I did, but haven't actually swam since. It's 2016, so we're 6 years on, and I still have some kind of strange PTSD going on with swimming. But that's for another.
That is a separate conversation. You get that's not that. Just to be clear, that isn't a flippant comment. There is a genuine.
No, it's true. We are going to cover that off at some point, and we're going to try and work me through that. And we've had some help on that before, but we will come back to that at a different time.
It is a genuine traumatic stress disorder that you have that you're working through. It's not a it's not a misuse of the phrase PTSD, which is often done.
No, I struggle in a very strange way in the water now because of it, but. Here we are, back at the CELTMAN for this will actually be my sixth time, and if we consider you just in this moment, just to be a client, I think you'll be the 8th or the 9th client, I have to check records, that I've taken through the CELTMAN. So I've got a lot of experience with the race, personal experience as a support runner twice. And
for me last year.
For you last year, and for a friend of ours the year before. And I know the race well, I know the route well, and I also know what can go wrong well.
Yes.
And that's a recounting of things going kind of badly wrong. I mean, there are other things that could go wrong. I know people have had some pretty hard crashes on that course. And then there's other things that stop people, like simple mechanicals, like the chain breaks and they don't have a spare, and it's as simple as that.
There's been a few years where the weather's been so bad that nobody's gone on the high course.
Yeah.
Things like that. It's a very, very brutal and harsh environment, but that is the whole sell. That is the whole sell.
Yeah.
So
I think the long and short of all that is that the CELTMAN, in my experience, in my relatively long experience as a coach, the CELTMAN is a race that requires a lot psychologically as much as physically. It's a tough race. And I know tough races, and that sits right up the top of them.
That's why I call it a bit of a journey, a bit of an experience rather than a race, because triathletes are devils for detail, for data, and people are asking me beforehand what watch do I want to sit at and all these things. And actually, I want to get to the high course. I said it last year. I'll say it again this year. My sole ambition is to get to the high course and to enjoy the process, because it's a magnificent part of the world. It's an incredible experience. There's a real community feel about it. And the only thing that I think could ruin that is with big egos, big sort of competitive natures. Even the people coming in at the top, it was all smiles. It wasn't any sort of top. Yeah. It was different. It does feel different to an Ironman race because it feels a little bit less corporate, and it's just less fast. You get a bit more time to take everything in, and it's longer. So it's more like, it's the comparison for me is like the ultra running community versus the road running community. And I'm not going to go in any more detail on what those comparisons are, but if you fit in either one, you should have a perception of the other, and then you should be able to maybe understand what I'm trying to say there. But
I think what's really obvious, and you just said it a second ago about the CELTMAN, the reason people can come through the CELTMAN, I think people on an Ironman, and this isn't about the coaches, I think on an Ironman you can get your head down, do the work, and you're working against data, like you're saying. It's very driven by performance driven, let's say. I think the CELTMAN fits into that mold because it's everybody on it, including the marshals and the support teams and all the rest of it, but everybody involved knows how hard this is. There are moments, I've told you before about the moment that I found myself very frustrated because of the swim thing at the top of one of the peaks, where it's 20 minutes at least of constant gradient, constant hard gradient, and the wind beating you down. And I got to the top of this particular hill, got off my bike, lifted it over my head, ready to throw it into the sea. Like a dramatic moment that I still remember why I felt like that. So this is impossible. It's just going on forever. This is not normal. And then pulled the bike back down, got back on it and continued. And I think throughout that race, much like the ultras and the things that we've done before, people are having these experiences all the time. You had it yourself many times through that race where you think, this is just her, especially the headwind that you experienced.
I remember there were two real moments for me, which I'll touch on. Just sorry to interrupt, but yeah.
No, it's as simple as to say that there are moments that people have on that race that they may not have in other races because of the sheer brutality of it, because of the setup, because of the fact that it is extreme. I don't know who would define what that means, but you know, you hit that race and you know what it means from that perspective. That everybody on it, as soon as you come in, whether you come in first, last, in the middle, nobody really, even when they hand out the medals, like who came first and all the rest of it, everybody is excited because somebody did an amazing time on that same course. But they can also go and shake that guy's hand because they know they did the same thing as you did.
It's a lived shared experience. And I think the environment makes it completely different. So from a general recommendation point of view, it's the sort of race that anyone with any sort of triathlon aspirations, I would 100% recommend. Any of the races on the X-Tri World Tour are magnificent. They are things that I have a few more booked in this year, with a few more booked in next year, travel permitting, which is very exciting from that side of things. But the bottom line is they're a fantastic organisation. Stuart, who looks after us with the CELTMAN and the sort of broader conversations there, brilliant guy, brilliant team, and they've just got really, really clear ambitions for it, which is they want people to have a good time and put on a good race, and they want to respect the integrity of the areas. They want people to respect the race and respect the environment, because a lot of them are in remote cultural parts of the world that require that respect. Shieldag is a town of 80 people, and that's where so one day a year it is taken over by these triathletes coming in, panicking each morning. So just to paint the picture of what last year looked like, if you haven't seen the YouTube video, I'd encourage you to go and do so as it runs through it in a bit more detail. But bottom line is the race starts at 5 a.m, which means that you need to be up really at 1:30. Because you need to be getting food down you. You need to start getting glycogen on board. You need to clear your bowels. That is triathlon 101. Get in and out of the cubicle as soon as you can, because that means, one, you're not going to be waiting in queue, but two, you don't need to worry about that on the race, and you're not worrying about additional buoyancy when swimming or anything of that ilk. But it's a case of getting as much down, and you getting switched on and sort of cognitive as soon as you can on a very, very challenging sleeping pattern, because ultimately triathlon's a very demanding sport. The CELTMAN has a huge kit list. Mechanicals, bikes are very, very supersonic things these days. There's a lot of things to consider, and you don't want to be going into that switched off. So I remember waking up at 1:30. I was actually surprised at how switched on I felt. I think that's probably just the adrenaline kicking in, the buzz coming in, and a lot of anticipation that meant that I felt I was ready to go. So I'm not going to run through what I had for breakfast, but basically we got there and we were there in good time, checked the bike in, and had plenty of time to sort of relax, chamois cream up, Vaseline up my neck and all of the above, and then get on the bus to head to the swim start, where they had midgie protectors with fires, bagpipes, the flaming CELTMAN symbol, just a real buzz before the race started. And then we kicked things off at 5 a.m. So I wasn't pleased with the swim. I just didn't really switch on and got caught in a bit of a tide pull at the end. And for some reason, I started sighting the wrong white house. There is a white house that you used to sight, and for some reason I chose one that was about 500 metres to the left of it. So I veered off left and then had to bridge some gaps to come back. So I ended up swimming about 3.6k, which is village for me, really, to be honest. But again, a mistake I'm going to fix for this year coming. But I've never had a good swim in a triathlon. I've never had it. Well, actually, my first Ironman I did. I had 1:17 I did. That went well. But ever since then, it's gone downhill. So it's hoping for something better this year. The cold didn't really bother me too much, as it's the same temperature, if not slightly warmer than I've been used to swimming here, because we are in Scotland. Got onto the bike, everything started really well, managed to hold sort of 35 kilometres an hour for the first 30-40k, and then you enter the loop from Kinlochhuman round. And I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses here, but the bottom line is the trade-off between power and weight in terms of watts versus pace up a gradient is horrifyingly in favour of being as light as possible. Because I'll get the calculations wrong, but there's a table I've seen and studies I've seen that basically say the best thing you can do to get better at going up hills is not gain more power, but get lighter. So from my point of view, the hybrid athlete challenge element here is that weighing about 92, 93 kilos means that I'm going to have to put out a significantly higher power on the bike to be able to come in at the time desired. And that means that I need to obviously do a lot more work and training to be able to get my functional threshold power high enough to output the power over X amount of time, 202 kilometers, to be able to hit that watts per kilo. And that gets in the way of the additional training. It makes the strength work on top of that challenging. It makes the bodybuilding work style stuff on top of that challenging. Bottom line is the power to weight ratio in terms of trade-off for being lighter or being more powerful is massively in favor of being lighter. So at 92, 93 kilos, which I was then and am currently now, the amount of power I would need to have and be able to sustain over 202 kilometers is significantly higher than somebody that would be lighter than me. Obviously, there's a trade-off that the lighter you get, the less power you need to maintain the same pace, and vice versa the other direction. But the other direction is significantly more damaging in terms of the actual time that you're aiming for. So from a training point of view, that means we need to work that in terms of getting my FTP as high as possible, as well as getting that optimal weight. But in doing so, that eats into other training opportunity. That eats into the weight loss that might then inhibit my strength work. And as I train like this, because I enjoy training like this, and I'm not racing anyone on the day, there's a balance that I need to find in terms of what's optimal. And having learnt the lesson from last year, I am now going to try and get below 200 pounds, maybe below 90 kilos for this race this year, just to see if that makes a bit of a difference. Because whilst the bike performance was solid, the best example I can come up with is I think I came low 90s out of 118 finishes at the CELTMAN. I think there are about 25, 30 DNFs. Low 90s out of that race. And then 5 weeks later at the Outlaw, I was in the top 100 or 115th or something out of 1,800 people on a much flatter course. So that just goes to show the power to incline trade-off at the body weight is an interesting way to look at it. So I'm not saying, oh, I'm heavier, therefore I'm not going to perform well. This is something I need to consider in my training protocol, in my approach and strategy for this race moving forward. But it is something that I need to take on board, which means I'm never going to be moving as quickly as a 75 kilo bloke, even if he's on the same bike as I am, with the same prep as I am. There's a lot of things to consider there. So
it's worth considering as well that there are certain that's interesting crossover the stat between the CELTMAN that we found and the Outlaw. It told us certain things that we were able to then use in this prep. We've also got to bear in mind that your weight ratio there on the bike isn't. You're not. Let's be as direct about it as we can. You're not a 95 kilo, 100 kilo guy because you enjoy Empire biscuits too much. It's.
I do like Empire biscuits, though.
This is because of the manner in which we're training and all the rest of it. So each time we would take, let's look at it as an experiment. Each time we take Fergus Crawley version 1, Fergus Crawley version 2 through the CELTMAN, we're going to hopefully learn more things, not just about how you perform in the CELTMAN, but more things about how that particular very, very unique environment lends itself, or the training for it, how that detracts from our overall will to maintain this kind of hybrid quality of training. We could, think about the training that we've done up to this point for the CELTMAN has been very much CELTMAN focused, but you've also trained for and lifted the Dinnie Stone. We're also maintaining, whether people consider this a noble cause or not, I think it's particularly noble. We're maintaining a certain physique that we want. There's a massive will on your part to maintain a certain amount of strength in order. We could scrap concurrent training, scrap hybrid training, and say, well, we want to get you prepped for one of the toughest triathlons there is.
And funnily enough, at this point,
bump hybrid training, make you a triathlete.
I'm just going to interject here because there are triathletes and there are people that I speak to that bring this up because they don't comprehend that you can enjoy weight training for the sake of weight training. So they think, well, why is he weight training? An idiot. He just made his race harder for himself.
Yeah.
Whereas I do it because if I didn't do it, I'd miss it, and that's perfectly okay because I like to do these things and I train because I enjoy it.
Well, this is what hybrid is to us, certainly to me, and I know it is to you, is this ability to say, well, I do want to do one of the toughest triathlons. This is an extreme triathlon. I want to not just get through it. I have been through it one time. This is me talking in your voice, and didn't hit the mark that I felt like I wanted because I want to go up that damn mountain. So what am I going to do now? Well, I have two options. I can scrap everything and become an absolute triathlete. And of course, you're 15 minutes off that high course. You'd smash it. Or we can say,
11 minutes to confirm.
Or we can say, what are the variables that we can manipulate in order to maintain our hybrid focus, to maintain that hybrid output, to maintain what it is that makes Fergus Crawley in his own heart, and never mind marketing and all the rest of it, but also make that performance goal a reality. And that's what we spent. I was going to say that's what we spent the last year doing, but it's not. That's what we spent this CELTMAN prep doing, is making sure that you are now in a position to say, what can we do? What are the variables we can adjust? What are the things that we can do? And one of which is, right, let's drop any excess weight that we don't want or need. Let's play with that variable a little bit around the time, exactly as you said earlier on. We don't want that then to inhibit performance, so let's play with it intelligently, and let's make sure that we're, all stones are turned over and
picked up off the floor in Potarch and Aberdeenshire.
Picked up in Potarch, yeah. So that's what we're doing. So it's all. I'm always keen to underline, okay, people. It's not apples and oranges. It is apples and oranges. It's not like for like when somebody's saying, yeah, but my mate Dave, he's done it, twice, and he doesn't do all the training you're doing, so you must be doing something wrong. It's like, well, no, we're doing something very different here, and that's the whole point.
And the bottom line is, the body weight consideration is the big one for me this year. So I'll get onto it in a second, but just to review the rest of the race. Bike went well. I wouldn't say I really cocked up on anything other than the fact that I had too much caffeine in the morning. I am very sensitive to caffeine and to booze, which means that if I have a pint and I am even remotely hydrated, I will genuinely be to and from the bathroom every 20 minutes max until I am completely dehydrated. And I kind of went into a bit of a flushing mode from having too much caffeine the morning of, which is stupid given that I didn't feel like I needed it that morning. So that was a bit of a performance consideration error on my part. I only had about 200 milligrams, but that was enough to really kickstart things in the wrong direction. And I got off the bike to piss about 12 times in that race. And previously I hadn't been in races where I just pissed in my tri-suit going downhill, because I didn't think that was going to be the make or break in terms of losing time. I didn't think those margins could add up. But I reckon I lost about 4 minutes to pissing throughout that whole race, because I kind of occasionally lingered a little bit, 5 or 6 minutes maybe. And just that process of unclipping, getting off the bike, sort of thinking about it, looking around, making sure there's no children nearby, all this stuff, lost me a lot of time. And also it took me out of that psychological tuck in and keep going, that loss of power, that regenerating power, all this stuff. And got to the end of the bike, and then just before the turn off into the headwind, my chamois cream had just ran out and my perineum area was in pieces. So I desperately pulled over to re-chamois cream up, but then I was just in pain. This was only 2 weeks onto the new pterodactyl of a bike that I do have, so I don't want to sound ungrateful in any sense, but whilst I wasn't a very fast, very, very seductive-looking bike, I'd only had 2 weeks on it at a reduced and changed crank length. So my body wasn't necessarily physiologically used to that, which meant that my positioning hurt, which my perineum, or gooch, shall we say, took the hit. Then the final 40k is a guaranteed headwind every year, so that's just something you got to psychologically prepare for, but it doesn't make it any easier. Got off at one stage just to put my head on the truck for about 90 seconds just to reset my brain, and then descended down into T2. So then I was pretty confident that I had the run in me if I looked at it logically. I knew it was 19 kilometers in my head, having plotted the route and read about it, spoken to people, and then asked several marshals who kept saying 17. And then I stopped and said, look, I don't want you to just tell me it's 17 to make me feel better. I want to be able to calculate my pace. Is it 19 or is it 17K? And they said, oh, it's 17. So I don't know where the information came from, the false communication, but it was 19, not 17. But I set my pacing based on the fact it was 17. So had all those things that I've mentioned stacked up, then I would have made the high course. But I think the main thing is that I hadn't done a full distance triathlon since May of 2019. And there are just little things that you learn from doing them that then carry you through into them. Take the Outlaw, for example. I had the bike ride of my lifetime. I didn't unclip once. I came in at 5:21 on a 180k bike ride, 112-mile bike ride. And that was just because I had all these little things to focus on. I didn't get off the bike to go to the bathroom. Use your imagination as to what happened. I knew how to store my food a bit more effectively. I knew that if I broke that psychological momentum, I'd just slow down a little bit. I made sure to rely on my strategy and pacing rather than listening to everyone else. Yeah. And just stuck to the plan. All these things that then made me think, oh, I wish I'd had that information for me for the CELTMAN. But now, going into this year, I've got it because it's fresh in my mind. And I've made sure to keep all the lessons from those 2 races last year fresh in my mind, so that going into this year, training considerations now, reduce the strength volume, up the frequency in the pool, up the frequency on the bike, get as light as I can manage without inhibiting performance too much between now and then, and just become as powerful and as used to that zoom of a bike that I have to be able to put out the best bike performance I can, because that bike ride is what's going to get me to the high course. I'm not going to lie, I'm intimidated by this race. I'm intimidated by the fact that there is a bit of a redemption going on for me here, and if I fall short again, I'm going to look like a bit of a, not failure, but I'm going to look like I've got something wrong. I'm willing to accept that that is something that might happen. That is part and parcel. All the things we've just discussed, I'm not going to care because it's part of the journey. But outwardly speaking, I want to get this right because it's going to be an experience for me on the high course. Inwardly speaking, it's going to be profoundly rewarding to be able to do that. But also, I would like to show that with these considerations, with these lessons that we learned, we can then apply that to the demand in front of us. But we can't plan for, and we can't.
You might also get sparkled in the 20 minutes.
We can't plan for the. We can't plan for the weather. We can't plan for the rain. We can't plan for the camper van bottlenecks that might occur at some corners. All these things that we can apply on paper might not be the case. So the main lesson I want to cover here is that whilst we've got a clear strategy to race day, we've got lessons from last year, and I'm sitting here saying, you know what? I'm acknowledging that I might fall short again. I'd like not to. That might very much be the case, and that's something that's it's not in the front of my mind by any stretch. I'm confident that we're going to get there, but I'm also experienced enough in these things to know through Jonny's guidance and just through pure experience that there are variables that we're not going to be able to control, and those are the decision-making moments that are going to make the difference in terms of the real split seconds that add up over that 202-kilometre bike ride. I'm nervous, I'm intimidated, but I am excited to go at it again. It's a beautiful part of the world. We've got some lessons to take on board, and I think the time this is coming out will be just about, and this is probably going to be after the CELTMAN actually. So if you're listening at this stage, you'll probably know how things have unfolded, which is exciting but daunting in some ways. But I think the real bottom line for me is that when we look at this from a coaching perspective, you can sort of add your perspective on this in a second, but it's just trial and error. This is what we tell anyone that's been on a consultation call with us. We are not sitting here trying to sell a magic bullet or we have the solution that nobody else does. All we do is look at the stresses and look at the context and look at the things that we can take control of, and then we enter a period of trial and error with each individual to find the minimum effective dose for the maximum effective return. And whilst there is a scientific and logical reason in the way that we put my training together from now until race day, commercially speaking, my workload is very demanding at the moment, and it's proving quite difficult to make work around all the training. The modern mind is taking off in different ways from a consultancy point of view. There is increasing pressure on timelines and things to make work, which means that making training happen can be very damaging in terms of recovery, and it can be psychologically. Sometimes I don't want to do it. So we can look at things like, how would we normally put a training program together? We'd have strength work in the morning and swimming in the evening. But actually, we're probably going to do it the other way around, because for me, psychologically, I know that I prefer doing my cardio first thing in the morning and lifting in the evening. So the interference effect gang out there that are losing their heads right now, there are sacrifices that need to be made to compromise on practicality versus efficiency to allow me to get the volume to get to the end goal here. And that's why this is equally as exciting for me, because it views me as an experiment for our athletes under OMNIA, but also it gives me the freedom to play with my schedule and my work demand and everything going on to get the best out of me as an individual and see how far that can go. And that is why there is so much value in challenges like this, and why rigidity that is often so much spoken about in the fitness industry out there does nobody any favours and is damaging to us holistically. And these are only things that I've learned through being under Jonny's guidance from a coaching perspective for so many years. So I think there's a lot there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is a lot. There is a lot. I mean, there's loads more. We'll probably draw this to a close quite soon, I think. But you got to learn all the rules, understand all the rules before you get any right to start breaking the rules, I think. And that's something I've used in about 8 different contexts through conversations many times. But I think it applies in this case. We're by no means going to rip up the hybrid playbook nor our methodology. We're still working towards that kind of scientific underpinning throughout. But there are ways that we can manipulate it, and we will use those. But going back to the and probably a good point to sign off on really is going back to the experience that you had previously, and going back to the experience of the race itself. I had a terrible experience in some parts of it, but an absolutely magical experience in other parts of it. And I know that when we did the marathon part of the course together, I was your support runner last year. We talked and we I shared with you some of the moments that I'd had during that that race when I did it, and I think it's worth saying again. It's worth sort of considering that note is that there is a performance goal. There is an outcome. We do want, both of us want to kind of go past that point that we've been, as an athlete and here as a coach, and say, we know that you can make that particular performance goal. We know it'll be tight because we know that we're doing things for a certain reason in a certain way that we've covered. But ultimately, once again, as we said throughout that previous experience, throughout our previous runs at it, and throughout all the training, we also just want to have a blast doing this. You know, we want to be able to come out the other end. And if we have to come out the other end going, there's more lessons to be learned, then we've been gifted something again. So I think always positive, always forward thinking, always trying to kind of, tighten the bolts and all the rest of it, but always with an eye on having a great experience. And as we've said already, the organisers there, the race itself, the locals, the area, and the sheer harshness of it all mean that no matter what happens, it's still going to be some experience. And perhaps when this podcast comes out, it'll have already happened, in which case we'll probably drop a link in to take you to where the result was. So watch in this order, and we'll come back and do a revisit at some time and see how many words we have to eat.
Well, yeah, hopefully so. But I think the only final thing I want to add there is just that the way things have gone for me in the past few years with obviously documenting all this stuff on YouTube sometimes adds in the odd little tinkling of extrinsic considerations that really I try and ignore. And for comparison, 660 was the hardest ultra I've ever done because it was the first ultra I've done that was purely really for internet clout. To be perfectly honest, it was just a way of, there was no charity attachment to it. Yes, it was an exploration of hybrid methodology, but my thinking was, this is playing on the same premise of the previous two challenges that I've done like this. This will be good to just put a bit more stamp on the space, and it should get some views on YouTube, because that's the way, sadly, I need to think when playing the YouTube's game. YouTube's game. And that just goes to show that when I was doing things for extrinsic reasons, or allowing the extrinsic reasons to come into my head a little bit, I had a really bad time. The final 20K of that ultra were probably the least enjoyable fitness moments I've ever had. There was no real value for me to take from it. Yes, it was on the canal that I've ran hundreds and thousands of miles on almost at this point, but I wasn't enjoying it. And that's why I think I'm really keen now to just lay out the intrinsic motivations for me doing the CELTMAN, why I'm so much looking forward to it. And whatever happens, I know I'll have a really good time and take things away from it. So I don't want to sound like I'm setting myself up for failure in any sense, because that's not what I'm doing. All I'm doing is encouraging you to potentially consider how you approach certain things in the way that I do now, because it gives me the freedom to enjoy these experiences without the pressure of the performance goal being the overarching thing. Yes, it's there. Yes, if I don't hit it, I'll be disappointed, but I also know I'll be a better person for whatever the outcome is. And that gives me a freedom to go at this with an open mind, with a clear performance goal I want to hit. No doubt about it. Let's not get that wrong. There is a clear black and white metric that I want to box off. But I also know that within the context of how I operate as an athlete, how we operate as a business, everything going on, there are considerations that I need to take on board. And there are only so many things that I can control. So if you're prepping for a race, if you're prepping for a goal, please do consider the broader parameters that you're working within, because the freedom to enjoy these things for what they are with an open mind makes them much more valuable than just the black and white Strava segment or the PB or whatever it might be. There is much more to this process than just the results on the board. And I think that's the real point that I want to finish on. So yeah, let's finish. Thank you very much for listening to episode number 5. Is it? It is 5
yeah, I believe so.
Of the Omnia Performance Podcast. Please remember to do all of the things with the following and the subscribing and the commenting and the rating, reviewing on whatever platform you're listening to. Please do share your favorite episode thus far with a friend or your gran or your brother or your cat, if they're as sophisticated as I've heard they are in some parts of the world these days. Thank you again for listening, and see you next time.
Cheers.